If you're persistent, it does work, I swear.
That was better.
Yeah. Well, this is better for authority. Hello and welcome to the penultimate meeting of the Ayn Rand Appreciation Society. On the relevant page of Atlas Shrugged, we will get started. Yes, this week the motion is This House Believes Capitalism Kills. Before we get to that, there are a few announcements. Starting with our external computer has an announcement. I think he's already said it, but I just want to get him to say it again because I have that authority.
Thank you, sir. So Galway Equity, 10th and 11th of February. Show up. Give me your names. Get involved. Come on. Don't leave me hanging. I know the Trinity was a bit of a letdown and people well oversubscribed. And that's what happened there, and it's quite a tragedy.
Galway's nice.
Galway.
Oh, that's a great place.
Minus more Galway.
South of Dublin, didn't you say?
Will I need a passport to get there?
Yeah.
Or your driver's license.
Just put on the
Just triggers Ben, that's the only
No comment. No, because the first time I met Craig Miller, we were going down to the first round of the Irish Times competition, and we stopped in Newry, and Craig turns to me and goes, "So I need my passport with the boards in it." And I was like, "Yes, Craig, they're going to frisk you, they're going to take you off." And they're like, "Oh, he's from North London, we're definitely not letting him in." Yes, so I'm sorry for interrupting your announcement. Blame Craig.
I was pretty much done. For all those who have any border worries, we can arrange a mattress lorry and hide you in there.
Let it never be said we don't go that extra mile in the back of a mattress truck apparently as well. So, yeah.
You would like it to sleep with it?
Other announcement was about the Christmas dinner.
Hey on. I will be in the. Cheers, mate. I'll be in the library tomorrow, like indefinitely. So if you want to come and give me some money for the Christmas dinner, which is on Tuesday, that'd be really nice. Just drop me a message, and I'll be about whatever. So, what?
Can I drop it on a murder council?
If you don't like me, then sure. That's perfectly fine too, Harry. Are you alright? I'll get my bodyguard to beat you up.
I'm not taking any shit.
Find him!
I kind of have to.
Do it.
No, it's absolutely necessary.
That is absolutely
necessary.
Court? Okay, fine. One part of the rest.
Make my day.
That is a fine. Let the record show that that's a fine. Yes. So, any more announcements? Have I anything I need to announce? No, I never have anything to announce. So yes, we'll go to the minutes from last week's debate, which was This House Believes that 2016 is the best year to be alive. Thank you very much, Mr. Whitehurst.
Murphy. The Godkin debate at the Litterific took place on the 1st of December and was attended by 32 members. Private members' business was heard from Mr. Calvin Black, who wished to congratulate Litterific Outreach Officer Andrew Dillon on his fantastic showing at the Strictly QUB Dance-a-thon. Here. Mr. Dillon's moves took him to the window, to the wall, to the sweat drips down head balls. I'll wait. Mr. Chris Spratt then wished to thank Mr. Jemmy Mueller for all the work he has done for the Society, not just as Treasurer, but also as an active and contributing member from day one. President's questions are heard from Mr. Matthew Sullivan, who inquired as to what the President had for breakfast that particular morning. President Murphy responded that he enjoyed the classic BBCC, a bacon brie cranberry ciabatta. Without further ado, President Murphy then announced the motion for the evening. This House believes 2016 is the best time to be alive. Opening the proposition was Mr. Shea Glasgow. He claimed that 2016 is the best there was, the best there is, and the best there ever will be. He immediately dismissed the past, safe in the knowledge that a warm bed is superior to an indistinct cave, and claimed that the onset of smartphones had given us the capability to instantly access the collective sum of human knowledge, as well as to browse memes and post #Belfast. Opening for the opposition was Mr. Matthew Bryson. He right away set it straight that the average quality of life in the UK was better in 2015 than it is now. He made Irish mammies the world over shed a tear at the reminder of Terry Wogan, before going on to claim that between Trump, Labour, Brexit, college campus culture, the regressive left and the alt-right, we hadn't had much to shout about this year. Continuing with the proposition was Mr. Con O'Neill. He set out his best case early. We are the last generation to experience a true childhood away from the technological revolution, and yet we are also in the Goldilocks position of being able to reap all its benefits now we are older and wiser. He claimed that global warming meant that more flowers were growing, and that we have experienced true political change for the first time in years, and begged the House to forget about pesky facts and think about how we feel. Continuing for the opposition was Mr. Killian Thornton. How can 2016 be the best time to be alive when Freddos have gone from 15p to 25p in little over a decade? In comparatively minor news, ISIS, refugees and Syria are putting a bit of a dampener on our spirits. To conclude, he claimed that truly the best time to be alive would be when we didn't have segregated communities and Arlene Foster finally admits that then their gays are all right, so they are. Speaking thoroughly for the proposition was Mr. Hugh Dobbin. He asserted that we're well past the barren years of Blair, Bush and Brown. For now, better or worse, we have seen a true exercise of democracy in action. He blamed the Western media for skewing perspectives in order to frame the world in an altogether more negative light than is actually the case, before concluding that our culture and medical practice is better now than at any point in human history. Batting third for the opposition was Mr. John McAleenan. Contrary to the previous speaker, he claimed that GBRNI exit had put democracy under threat and had led to a 41% increase in hate crime. Mr. McAleenan then went on to list a number of terrible things about 2016, like some sick Generation Game spin-off. Trump, Joe Cox, the Pound, China, Nice, the Zika virus, the Dallas shootings, the Orlando shootings, the Germany shootings, and of course, a cuddly toy. Concluding for the proposition was Ms. Kira Campbell. She claimed that we are experiencing a new world order, and that fact was simply too sweet for the opposition. Democracy in action, living before the major effects of climate change occur, a whirlwind of culture and art. In 50 years' time, people will be asking the 2016 generation just how good it was to live in those halcyon days. Concluding for the opposition and so the debate was Mr. Matthew Bradley. The love letter to 2015 continued in Mr. Bradley's speech, harking back to a time when we still had Ali, Cohen, Lemmy, Wogan, Price and Bowie, and above all, decent-sized Toblerone bars. 2016 had seen the death of the Great British Bake Off, killer clowns and exploding smartphones. The worst thing that we had to deal with in 2015 was Mumford & Sons' new album. Questions were heard from Black, Beck, Spratt, Wilkinson, Bunting, Whitehurst, Vetter, Neil and Black. The judges convened and announced the winner of the golf competition for 2015 was Mr. Matthew Bradley. May I take the minutes as read? Thank you.
Yes, so, right, members of business, does anyone have any issues they'd like to talk about? Any really cool stuff in the news? Stealth, Mr. McAlee.
Angela Merkel has announced her new policy plan to ban the burqa in Germany.
A motion that was debated in this very house. Does anyone have any more issues that they want to bring into that, that they didn't get to say during that debate? Yourself, Mr. Spratt?
Might I add, rejected by this house?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It passed. It abstained.
I thought that rejected.
I confess I didn't chair it, so I can't remember. Did
Did I share? In which case Peter Dunn would have the minutes. I will look.
I feel that's conflating from the debate. Does anyone have anything they want to add on that? Yourself, Mr. Robinson?
Why is it's now necessary for the British government to know everyone's internet search history to protect us from terrorism?
I admire your covert segue from burqas into state surveillance. I'm not quite sure how to bring that back to the main issue, but does anyone else have something they'd like to say about burqas before we move on to that? Finlay.
I would put it to the House that is precisely because Amber will can see into our souls that we still allow burqas.
You tell.
I personally think that decision of Angela Merkel's is a bad sign for liberal democracy as a whole.
Fair. And yourself?
In response to that, it was bad side for liberal democracy in which you made the decision that Europe's doors were open in the first place.
Mr. Derrick, want to respond to that?
Well, it's all starting to reek of desperation in the air of the potentially fourth term president. But I think it's key to see here that the major policy platform which she's running on is a reversal of what her entire third term represented. That was a general opening of borders of Europe and a leadership which encourages open society in Europe. It's starting to all unravel. Even if it's purely from electoral failures from AFD, it seems to represent a growing trend in which even with parties like AFD, the Freedom Party, they're all having an impact on how centre-right parties have put their policy platforms as. So even no matter what the results of this election are, the impact of AFD has been just absolutely influential.
And on that optimistic note, we'll move on to the sprightly issue of covert state surveillance. So, would you like to restate your opinion for the House so people can take from it what they will?
Yeah, I don't really see how it's necessary to know everyone's search history, including what porn sites they look at, what they want to buy online, what cat videos they look at on the internet, and I think it's just really creepy the way that if you go for a job in the public sector, that this can somehow be brought up and that it's somehow relevant to your employability. I don't really understand how that's going to help to tackle terrorism.
That's fair. Does anyone want to respond to that? They think it's fair that the government should be able to see all their cat videos?
I mean, government can look at it, like, I'm looking at some very funny cat videos, but
Yourself?
But,
sorry.
Is that cat videos or something else?
wouldn't you like to know? On the issue of privacy, however, our searches aren't exactly private at the minute unless you're very sensible and using cognitive browsing. That's why targeted advertising. I think it's why if you look at new phone when you're next to on Facebook, those adverts start to appear. If this is just more obvious now, but I still think it's an issue that it's not necessary.
But why is it brought up for employers and everything like that? How is that relevant, and how does that tackle terrorism?
That I do not have an answer to at the moment.
Philly, do you have something to contribute?
Well, I confess myself initially agnostic on this issue, but I would just ask the House, given that we are occasionally told when they go to step out of the shadows that the security services are foiling terrorist plots against this country on a daily basis, that is no exaggeration, however unlikely, if a single life were to be saved because of information derived from this policy, genuine question, would that justify it?
It's a very interesting question. I'll go for Mr. Miller. Dr. Miller, sorry.
Yeah, would. I don't really care if somebody sees my porn history, it's not that exciting. So let them see it. I've got nothing to hide. I know that's a terrible argument and Harry's about to get
More people are killed by their trousers, I think.
Genuinely, I think it's worth doing. I think we're saving more than one life by having the policy. I'm not agnostic, I actually support it.
Yourself, Mr. Sutton?
I'm actually more concerned about the other bill she's passed, whereby the government can say that a site is adult content and make it so every ISP must ban it, and you can opt out of this, of course, and then be on a list of people who want to access sites the government doesn't want you to access. And of course, they can see which sites you are accessing as well, so not only can they see what somebody is accessing, whatever politically dissenting opinions they might have, the government also now has a nice list of things, of people rather, that they can check up on. And of course, I don't think they're going to stop at banning porn sites. I think they're going to slowly tack more and more things and call them adult content, put them under that umbrella.
I think that's probably a good point to sum up that little mini debate and probably just conclude that so long as you remember to click incognito mode, the entire state apparatus cannot touch you. We'll move on to President's question.
Computer scientist, it doesn't work.
We've had enough of experts anyway. Moving on to President's questions. Does anyone have any questions for me? Ms. Campbell?
Can we do this room every week? Because I want to be in a chair where my feet touch the ground.
I'm not catering to the minority here. No.
Racist.
Wait, you can bring that doesn't count. That doesn't count as racist. You can bring that chair to the Senate room if you wish. Well, is that a good 50-50 scenario?
I'm too lazy for that.
That's fair. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm not sure I want to talk to you. Mr. Black, you haven't said anything yet.
Very tempted just to stand there and say nothing. No, Mr. President, did you get a haircut?
No. I'm just vaulting. Mr. Fiddler.
I wanted to move this in private members' business, but maybe it's good for our timeline. Okay, what is, as a legal expert, I'd like to ask the President's opinion on the current case going through Her Majesty's Supreme Court.
Well, I mean, there's only, there's only so much I'm allowed to say in the interest of neutrality. So, I mean, to be honest, it really does, and this isn't just me being neutral, it genuinely does hang on a knife edge, I think, in some ways, because what you have is the amalgamation of three separate cases, all asking really quite contrasting constitutional issues as to just where sovereignty lies in terms of does it lie in Parliament or does it lie in all three of the devolved assemblies as well. It'll be very interesting to see just where the justices take it, where they take the idea of parliamentary sovereignty from now on. That will Westminster continue to be sovereign, or will that sovereignty now be devolved out to the devolved assemblies, and what ramifications that has in general? Probably it sounds quite nerdy, but to be honest, I cannot stress how important this case is for even just prerogative power, the prerogative power as a power of the monarchy. If it's decided that to sign a treaty you have to have the prior consent of Parliament, in that context, we're actually moving to a far closer system of the Senate in the United States than we are what would be the traditional sense of of the Crown in Parliament, giving Parliament sovereignty. So no matter what happens, it's a huge issue in terms of parliamentary sovereignty in a liberal democracy. So I'll probably leave it there. I hope I didn't ramble too long on that. No.
I thank the President for that very comprehensive answer on everyone's behalf.
Yes, Ms. Pickle.
When I was here over a year ago, we still have sweets. Where's the sweets?
Why would you bring it up?
No.
Are you just?
Do you want to respond to that?
I don't mind. I thought it was too expensive.
Austerity.
I thought we were going to say dental health or whatever.
Dental health, too expensive.
It's too expensive, apparently.
General bad things.
Any more questions before we move on? Yourself, sir.
What's on your porn history?
To be honest, I'm no longer allowed to work for MI6, so Miss Ireland, yes.
What did the President have for breakfast this morning?
I had 3 really nice sausage rolls from Centra, which came to about £2, so it was cheap as well. So I hope that's sufficiently working class for everyone.
Considering £2 cheap for breakfast?
Pardon?
Considering £2 cheap for breakfast?
I know the price of a pint of milk, thank you very much. What is it? It's like 1.10, depending on where you buy it. And with, no, we're not having any more questions. We're moving on now.
Come on. What many sauce did you take with these sausage rolls? That's the determining factor.
Regrettably, we were out of ketchup, which I have to say is probably one of the worst things I've seen this week. And I saw John Larkin's submissions in the Supreme Court. I had to resort to brown sauce and...
Jim resigned! Slagging off brown sauce.
Brown sauce is awful. Brown sauce.
You are a horrible human being.
Right, and with that, we'll move on to the substantive debate tonight. This House believes that what capitalism kills. And the first speaker for the proposition is Miss Kira Campbell.
Still too tall. Okay. Ladies, gentlemen, and other polite people, this house believes that capitalism kills. Now, as I'm defining the motion, I'm going to ask you, what is capitalism? Just to make sure that everyone in this room knows the dreadful system under which we unfortunately live is an economic system based on 1. Private ownership of property, 2. Using wage labour to create profit, and 3. Supposedly voluntary exchange of goods and services, or more like voluntary when you're rich. But our motion today has another question. So what exactly is capitalism killing? Maybe it might be killing morality. Maybe it might be killing my immortal soul out of my reasons to live. Or maybe it's just killing everything. But we're going to define this motion as the obvious one. Capitalism is killing people. Just to make that clear and get it out of the way, capitalism is killing people. And that's no joke. It's a serious problem that this global ideology fundamentally results in people getting killed. No, Craig. And we don't have to debate that, right? Killing people is wrong. I would think there's something wrong with us if that actually had to be debated. The question is of how to prove that capitalism is killing people.
On that point,
Oh yeah, Finlay.
I'd put it that it does need to be debated if, for instance, it kills fewer people than some other system would.
Good question. Maybe that will come up later in the debate. But what I'm going to talk about is inequality. Meanwhile, my colleagues are going to talk about how capitalism has affected mental illness, food waste, and small businesses, and how this ends up killing people. So my line is that capitalism kills people because it creates inequality, which then creates poverty, which then kills people, surprisingly enough. So what is... Craig, I'll let you have this.
You do realise it's non-communicable diseases that kills the most amount of people in this world? And it's capitalistic societies that have the lowest rate of non-communicable diseases.
Craig, we're not talking about disease anymore, we're talking about death.
Death.
Like, you have to get with the system, okay? What is capital? Capital is a stock. The wealth of capital comes from what you already have. But the problem here is that capital increases faster than growth in capital societies. The returns on capital exceed those of wages, and so everyone with inherited wealth just simply keep on getting wealthier while the rest can't catch up.
On that point,
I'll let you have this.
Inheritance isn't a necessary facet of capitalism.
Yeah, but like inheritance, like capitalism is a money gaining system.
We could just have back and forth.
Okay. It is telling that the sixth richest person in the UK is the Duke of Westminster. He's benefiting off of land his family owned centuries ago. He hasn't done anything at all to get his wealth, so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I notice some people think that capitalism and inequality need each other. The general theory is that inequality creates risk, which leads to greater innovation. But the rich don't actually need to innovate or invest once they have their wealth, just like people with inherited wealth.
On that point.
All they need to do, no, John, I know you're an economic person. All they need to do is sit back and enjoy the tax breaks and tax shelters to increase their wealth. No new innovators are actually going to catch up against that type of competition. So, you know, capitalism isn't only killing people, it's killing itself. How inequality kills people is that capitalism as an ideology. Yes, Ryan?
Yes, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, but also the rich get poorer, and more importantly, the poor get richer. And that's the point of capitalism and what it actually brought to the world.
Yes, but the point is that the poor people are dying under this system. And as I've said before, I don't think we have to say that killing people is wrong. But how inequality kills people is that capitalism as an ideology, firstly, doesn't give workers a fair wage for their labour, but it also means that the welfare state is being eroded because it's far too much government intervention in the market. So the people at the bottom of the ladder don't have any capital to gain wealth from. Their wages aren't high enough to keep up with the ever-increasing standard of living. No. The state won't help them. So what are they going to do when they run out of money at the end of the month? Because money means everything in a capitalist world. I'll let you just think about that. Take their children. The ones who can't afford all the expensive degrees from university that you need for a good job, or the ones who can't afford unpaid internship. They aren't going to be able to better themselves, no. And just on that point, why does capitalism prioritise exploitation of workers with better qualities such as intelligence and stamina? Why does it pick out those people and say, yes, if you're willing to be exploited like this, you too can earn the money you need to live? Why isn't every life valuable, regardless of whether or not you can work under a capitalist system? And what about the people who cannot work? The people who capitalism cannot profit off? The people who can't work themselves because of mental or physical illness, but also don't have any family to support them, and the state won't support them now either. What do? Because they do exist.
On that point.
Are we just supposed to let them starve? Are we supposed to just let the people who can't live in this system die? The point is here that capitalism is killing people, and if your ideology is killing people, it's a sign that it isn't working. If your ideology is killing people, it's a sign that it is fundamentally flawed. If your ideology is killing people, it is a sign that it is broken. No ideology that inherently results in people dying can maintain a stable system, and that is why capitalism will not last forever. Thank you.
And first speaker for the opposition, Mr. Owen Rice.
So, first thing you did was you gave a definition of capitalism, which is my idea, but then again, people who are against capitalism are quite good at stealing things. So you say that capitalism is only a voluntary exchange when people are rich. Well, I was in Enniskillen, was it 2 weeks ago, on a Black Friday. Yeah, a lot of those people are the people that I seen a few months ago lining up outside the Dole office, and they're buying plasma screen TVs, smartphones, designer clothes. Yeah, they're really doing bad for themselves, poor people. You're saying capitalism kills people through mental... Oh, sorry, no, that's the wrong one. So, the problem you're saying with capitalism is that it's inequality. Equality is artificial. Equality doesn't exist in nature. It has existed in no social system in history. That's a myth. Now begin. I've developed a comprehensive argument.
On that point?
This house. No, thank you. I've developed
On that point?
No, thank you. This House believes capitalism kills. My fellow team members will be addressing more specific aspects of the motion. I have decided to specifically address the link between capitalism and killing. Not only is this assertion incorrect, but because also the alternative directly causes death. No, thank you. So what is capitalism? It is an economic system characterised by private or corporate ownership of capital goods, by investments that are determined by private decisions, and by prices, production and the distribution of goods that are determined by competition in a free market. The first thing we notice with the definition is that it doesn't mention killing whatsoever. Go ahead.
Can I ask you where you got your definition from?
Well, there's a number of definitions on the internet, but they all basically say the same thing. I mean, you can just Google the definition. It's all basically the same thing. It's just, it's slightly different wording. Capitalism as an independent entity has no orientation toward violence or death whatsoever. Furthermore, the definition I have provided emphasises a principle of non-intervention towards the individual's private property and their consensual economic exchanges, which some people interpret as a non-threatening ideal due to the fact that external interference is minimalised, and also because it instills personal economic liberty against external parties.
On that point,
go ahead.
Or is the economic liberty being compelled by threat of hunger to enslave oneself for nominal wages?
Well, this is the thing, you don't necessarily have a right to those things. You have a right to earn those things, but a right is something that is fundamental to yourself. You're born with it. Now, if that could be made into a right, that would be great, no thank you. But that's not reality, that's just not objective reality. So I do know what you're saying, and it's very unfortunate, but sadly that's the case. Private businesses and individuals, which can be described as capitalists, exist solely for the purpose of making profit, which is done by selling a product or service for more than its original value, or as you call it, exploitation. As mentioned in the definition, economic exchanges in a capitalist system are carried out on a private and consensual basis. On a philosophical level, capitalism understands this as beneficial because humans are naturally inclined to pursue their own individual self-interest and are the most successful when free from external constraints. Adam Smith argues that capitalism at its root is about personal freedom balanced with personal responsibility. It is because of this freedom granted to individuals that death within a capitalist system is the result of individuals' personal actions.
Points?
No, thank you. In the most definite capitalist society on earth, the United States of America, the leading causes of death are self-inflicted as a result of an unhealthy lifestyle choice, such as smoking, drinking, and eating unhealthy food. The leading cause of death, no thank you. The leading cause of death in the United States of America is heart disease. The major contributing factor to this is the fact that 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. No thank you. While it is true that lifestyle choices provided by private businesses are what make epidemics like this possible, it is done so on an entirely voluntary basis. Unlike the state, the private sector does not coerce people into taking their money. Instead, it relies on persuading individuals using consent. Capitalism allows individuals to choose whether or not to purchase a product or service. Also, a free market ensures that there exists greater quality and a variety as a result of competition. For example, capitalism is not the cause of people being overweight, rather their lifestyle choices, which they have the freedom to choose. Go ahead.
Well, a lot of people don't actually realise this, but generally the very cheapest foods tend to be so full of additives such as soy.
No, I know what you're saying, but that in itself is a myth. You can easily live healthy, okay? It's very easy. Food is very cheap in this part of the world because we produce so much. No, thank you. Ultimately, in a system of private and voluntary, no, thank you. In a system of private and voluntary economic exchange, it is the individual which is responsible for the consequences of their own actions. And this leads me on to no, thank you. This leads me on to my next point. Capitalism evidently produces such an abundance of wealth that even the relatively poor can somehow still afford smartphones, cars, HD televisions, and being overweight from eating too much. Not only does capitalism not cause death, it can easily give us a comfortable existence even if we are relatively poor within the capitalist system. While few supporters would argue that it is a perfect system, we are constantly told by critics, no thank you, that it has somehow failed and that it is time for the alternative. What is the alternative? The alternative is the theory of social organisation which advocates that the means of production, distribution and exchange should be owned by the community or state. No thank you. Socialism. And there are two reasons why I believe that I need to mention socialism to the House that relate to the motion. Firstly, socialism has been tried. It has been tried many times and it has always been defeated by capitalism. This is the entire 20th century in a single sentence. And secondly, unlike capitalism, socialism does kill people. I went online a few days ago, Google Venezuela. The two articles that came up was firstly, women selling their hair to buy food, and secondly, was the printing of 20,000 Bolivar note, which basically means our currency is useless. If you were to talk consecutively about the dangers of socialism, you could easily spend a lifetime doing it. I only have a single point to make. What makes socialism a much greater danger to the individual is illustrated most significantly by the fact that within the past century, over 100 million people have been killed by their own governments as a result of them practicing socialism. So, just to conclude, not only is the motion false, but when you go home to your families this Christmas, remember that your warm and comfortable home, your presents, and your surplus of luxury food are brought to you by the merit of consumer capitalism. Thank you.
Proposition was Margaret Kuba.
Hi everyone. Just before I start, I just want to say that this is actually my first speech, like at the Literific, so please be nice to me. crying, so if I start crying in the middle of my speech, just don't mind me. Okay, right, so let's start then. Okay, as any good debater, I'm actually going to start my argument by making a really bad joke. So brace yourself. Two Russian grannies were standing in the bread line in Moscow. The first one said to the other, "This gets ridiculous. I've been waiting here for 2 hours to get my loaf." The other one said, "You think that's bad? In the capitalist West, the government doesn't even provide the bread." Now, although this opening joke may appear to counter the proposition that capitalism kills by comparing it to the communist system, or the social system as it was already did, let us not get bogged down by the false economy which the opposition is undoubtedly already trying to exploit. They rely on the fact that in the name of communism, socialism, Mao Zedong killed 60 million people, Stalin killed 40 million, Pol Pot 2 million, killed 2 million, and then Kim Il-sung killed 1.6 million. Yes, and undisputable facts. However, before the purpose of the opposition tries to suggest that capitalism is the only option, lest we end up with communism, socialism, which killed more, let me tell you how exactly capitalism kills. First, we must define capitalism, which Kier already did and Owen already did, but in case you sort of dozed off while no one was speaking, I'm just going to remind you again the Oxford English Dictionary definition of capitalism. An economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a natural concept, as already discussed, where individuals are afforded the profit of their own labour. However, not everything that's in the dictionary is actually what happens in practice. Now, let's go back to the definition. Like the ending says, rather than the state. However, currently the capitalism as an economic system exploits the state for its own means and goals. Otherwise, we'll have a free market system, which the opposition is actually defending, which is not the same as capitalism. In a free market system, those who provide the most value to society accrue the most wealth, until somebody with a better idea or cheaper product comes along and enters the market without restriction. No, thank you. Right now, the capitalist system we have uses the government manipulation to lock out competition, prevent social mobility, and increase inequality. Yes.
Yeah, that's crony capitalism. That is not actual capitalism as defined or laid out by Adam Smith.
Sorry, I'll come back to that later. Now, Okay, as practiced for the past 200 years, capitalism has been a continuation of mercantilism, a protection system which requires a strong military to enforce favourable trading conditions. Using the word prerogative, the king, emperor, or parliament would only permit trade in the kingdom or empire after joining a guild, purchasing a license, or clearing some other arbitrary barrier. After these barriers had been crossed, trade was heavily restricted to maximise the income, tax, and profit of those who managed to close those barriers. Now, those who played along paid the king and didn't rock the boat were we now with monopolies, higher positions in society, land, titles, and all the wealth and trappings of the upper middle classes. Those who didn't play the game or who threatened the profits of those who did were prevented from competing by force. Now, does this sound familiar to you? Because to me, that's exactly what's going to happen in the West. And of course, as any right-minded individual can see, this created inequality and it created a class system and it led to vast swathes of the world being trapped in permanent poverty, as Kier already said. The average person is restricted to buying from approved vendors. You're only restricted to work for approved employers. And you are therefore completely under the control of the state, which affords you enough money to survive without any surplus to invest or compete in the market as equal to others. The only way you can escape poverty back in the day was to take the king's shilling and fight to expand the empire or enforce the king's rule over your fellow citizens. Now, the military might of the ruling class has the overarching authority, and they control your life and death of everyone, and they exercise it every day. If you examine the form of capitalism we currently employ in the West, so in sort of a last-ditch attempt to stay in power, the ruling classes have adopted a policy which combines elements of socialism with constant warfare. Having come close to a communist revolution shortly after World War I, the ruling class and the government realized that they could minimize most dissent by providing a minimal payment of the population to stop them from falling into extreme poverty. Thus, today we have a welfare state whereby domestic revolutions are prevented through a complex tax system and various forms of welfare. As Keir already stated, the inequality created is killing it. It leaves public services underfunded.
On that point?
No, thank you. It locks small businesses out of the market and prevents anyone without ancestry from rising independently. Unlike death doses associated with communism, which are caused by regimes themselves, the deaths caused by capitalism are usually the result of capitalist constructions, be they systematic poverty, imperialism, Atlantic and post-Atlantic slavery. Poverty is one of the most overlooked causes of death today. Poverty is part of something called structural violence. That is violence against the bottom rungs of society in order to make a profit. Structural violence can occur due to a lack of adequate housing conditions, lack of medical care, slashing of wages, gentrification, etc. But without a doubt, capitalist structural violence is the largest killer worldwide. Studies by numerous researchers show that over 18 million people die each year due to systematic poverty.
On that point, then.
No, thank you. Sorry. Comparing this frequency of deaths from structural violence to the frequency of those caused by major military and political violence, such as World War II, where an estimate of 49 million people were killed. The Vietnam War, were 2 million killed. And even a hypothetical nuclear exchange between the US and Russia, with an estimated 232 million people. These numbers cannot even begin to compare with structural violence, which continues year after year. In other words, every 15 years on average, as many people die because of relative poverty as will be killed by the Nazi genocide of Jews over a 6-year period. This, in effect, is the equivalent of an ongoing, unending, and in fact accelerating thermonuclear genocide perpetrated on the weak and the poor every year of every decade throughout the whole world. And with this, I would like to conclude my speech, and I'm sorry I couldn't take my points of information.
Next up for the opposition, Mr. Dudon.
Thank you, everyone. And I would like to open by saying that I've never seen poverty on a death certificate. You know, the point is being made here about how systematic this is and about how much it is killing people. But we've got to further analyse what a capitalist system actually means, despite the wide variety of mostly the same definitions we have received tonight. Now, we've got to recognise why capitalism is not actually the large genocidal killer that it's being said it is. And I'll address first the issue of inequality, which was brought up by Miss Campbell, misconstrued by Miss Campbell, brought up on the same. Now, we must recognise that in the world today, capitalism is by far the most equal system. It's the one that provides the greatest amount of social mobility, the one which provides the greatest amount of welfare on a large scale. It has been mentioned so far that in history, the only kind of sustainable alternative to capitalism in the 21st century, or the 20th century as it mostly was socialism. And socialism, as we see, didn't work. I would ask anyone who's standing here today, do any of you want to move to North Korea? Do any of you...
On that point.
Yes?
So hang on. Are you saying that every single socialist state must be as bad as North Korea? Is that what you're currently trying to say?
Well, no, I was in the middle of a sentence. I mean, come on. No one wants to move to Laos either. Not many people wanted to move to Cuba. Not many people would have liked to move to the USSR before it collapsed. Remember that?
Point.
Yes?
Okay, so your point here is that basically capitalism is the best we have. That doesn't mean that it isn't still killing people.
This is in relation to a point which was brought by Mr. Finlay before he left at the very beginning, and it is true. You can blame sort of like, oh look, this one person died because of poverty. This obviously means, obviously not one person, but these people died because of poverty. This obviously represents that the system as a whole is killing people on a massive scale. And this simply is not true. If we look at the world across over, we see that capitalism is the one which provides the greatest amount of freedom, therefore is the most equal system, and is the one killing the least amount of people. Now, I would like to bring up the issue which was brought up by the second speaker for the proposition in regards to, colonialism, imperialism. Those are not things that we can, in essence, blame on capitalism. Instead, these are the efforts of individuals who are corrupt, not as a result of capitalism, but by other forces. As we have seen in other systems, there's equal amounts of corruption. George W. Bush, Tony Blair marched into Iraq under the suspicion of weapons of mass destruction. I do not think this is a capitalist issue. We must remember at the time, there was large support in public opinion for these endeavours. There was. They voted for it. So the point is that it does not prove that capitalism kills people. This is not a result of that. And this is what is important. Now, the point is, I would also like to bring up, is in relation to what capitalism actually means in the context of the modern Western world. Now, we are not suggesting some form of Ayn Rand libertarianism. These are not the sort of states that we live in the 21st century. That is not what this is. The first speaker, and it's very important, he mentioned people lining up at the Dole offices buying plasma screen TVs. Not necessarily saying that everyone who's unemployed has such a luxuriant lifestyle, but the point is that the capitalist system is able to provide in these areas.
On that point.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that one of the best things about capitalism is its most socialist aspect, which is that we have welfare. That's part of socialism.
It's in a capitalist system, so I don't believe it really points to the fact that either does or doesn't. Well, it's not binary. It proves that capitalism does or doesn't kill people in this context, and that's the point. Our state, its health services, its welfare systems are better than anywhere else in the world, which then again proves that it doesn't kill people. Now, once again, we must look at the fact of capitalist industry, what this means. It represents progress. It represents, the world becoming a better place. It doesn't kill people in this regard. It's in the world over capitalist system which are able to innovate. Something that the next speaker will go into much greater detail about is whenever we adopt capitalist policies, capitalist tendencies, that the world becomes better as a whole. We've got to look at the most... Yes?
But capitalism in general is about the individual. It's not about equality, as he said. It's not about the general welfare of everyone. So how can capitalism actually make the world a better place and stop killing people like every ideology apart from pacifism does?
Because it actually progresses things. Okay, we're actually moving forward, and that's the central point about why it doesn't kill people, which is often something that we deviate from here today. That's what the system at its core is about. Maybe it's not entirely about quality or about such and such, but it is about our rights to... It's about private rights, private property, private ownership, and that's what capitalism is about. This isn't something which inherently kills people. In the states where the highest death rates, the highest death tolls, it is as a result of authoritarianism on either the left or the right. Nations which do not recognise these...
On that point, sir?
Yes?
Well, you just said that the socialist parts of capitalism are keeping people alive, but surely those are the authoritarian parts of capitalism which are therefore killing people. So aren't you arguing against yourself?
No, I was talking about authoritarianism outside of capitalist systems across the world over. Yes, when it is deviating from the cores of what capitalism represents, that is where it therefore kills people. That is the core of what I'm trying to say here. The bottom line is that capitalism represents the best of what society has to offer. It doesn't kill people because at its core, capitalism is about, as we've already mentioned, it is the private ownership of property, private ownership of the means of production, and this does not inherently kill people. This is the fact, not as the first speaker of the proposition set out, or the second speaker. That is not what capitalism is about. It's about us taking the initiative, controlling our own industry, our own business, and moving forward with it. And that is why it is important to recognise that capitalism does in fact not kill people. And that concludes my speech today. Thank you very much.
Up next is Mr. Jimmy Cardwell for the proposition.
Thank you. Phone screen's broken.
Don't lie.
It is over the edge of phone screen.
Members of the House, today I'm going to speak to you about the incredibly exciting topic of mental illness and how it's all capitalism's fault. I'm going to talk about how capitalism creates and reinforces mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, and so on, and stress as well, which contributes as well to many other diseases and health problems like coronary heart disease, asthma, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and so on. Karl Marx. What is human nature? He argued that the one consistent element in all human societies throughout history and across the world was our need to work consciously on nature. And it's that which distinguishes us from non-human animals. He calls this our species essence. And he argued that post-industrialization, we become alienated in 4 ways. First, we become alienated from the product of our labour. For example...
Are you trying to say that all mental illness is environmentally caused?
No, I'm joking.
Okay.
First off, we're alienated from the product of our labour. For example, nowadays, when we work, we tend to work on a very small, specific part of a final product. A baker once may have baked a loaf of bread from start to finish and been involved in every single aspect of the process. But nowadays, a worker in a large bread factory would be responsible for one very specific task in this, maybe just like checking the bread to see if there's any deformities. Most people as well around the world cannot ever hope to afford the things that they produce. The second way in which we become alienated is from our own labour itself. Nowadays, many people perform these repetitive aspects of their job with little to no impact or little to no input over what they do.
On that point?
Sure.
Yeah. What you're describing is, I'm just assuming it's pretty similar to what Adam Smith is at the pin factory, where they all had these single elements and each worker only had one part of the process. However, the point of which I'm pretty sure you were making was that the way capitalism streamlines systems through the division of labour, it creates the opportunity for jobs that are not directly related to things like food production and basic machinery, which definitely encompasses division of labour the most. So that it maximises the amount of creative jobs, such as in the music industry, film studies, which are much more conscientiously driven by workers and not the managers or general direction. So
I would argue that under capitalism, the majority of jobs will be under a hierarchy, under someone above. That's just the nature of capitalism, and it's this contributes to this alienation from our own labour. The third way is we become alienated from others. Instead of viewing each other as fellow human beings, we view each other as competition for jobs. There's very little benefit to caring about the collective rather than the individual. We view people through the lens of profit and loss rather than a lens of compassion. And lastly, we are alienated from our own nature, our own species essence. We become alienated from...
How does that kill people?
I'm going on to this. These were all observations, of course, made in the 19th century, but for the most part, they still apply to this day. In a 2013 study, Gallup reported findings about workplaces across 142 countries from 2011 through 2012, and they found that just 13% of workers felt engaged with their work. 63% felt that they were not engaged, and 24% felt actively disengaged. It's very clear that people today, the vast majority of people, are alienated from their work. Workers have to subject themselves to this alienation in order to afford the basic necessities of life, such as food and shelter, and this has an extremely negative impact on their mental and physical health.
Do you really think subsistence farming is any better at stopping isolation?
I'm not saying that.
Talking about.
I'm not arguing that the thing that was before was better. I'm arguing that what we have now is bad and we could do better. The first Whitehall study of British civil servants, which was a study of 18,000 men, they found that in the lowest employment grades, people were much more likely to die prematurely than men in the highest grades. The second Whitehall study examined over 10,000 civil servants, both men and women. It began in 1985 and continues to this day. They're still studying the same people. Sure.
You're talking about civil servants. Civil servants work for the government, socialism, so therefore socialism.
Socialism. No. No. This is representative of a hierarchical system. That's what the study is studying, and this hierarchy exists in all capitalist jobs. And it examined 10,000 civil servants and found that people who feel that they have low control over their job have 2.5 times the risk of coronary heart disease compared to those who feel they have a high level of control. Those at lower employment grades are far more likely to smoke, more likely to have a higher BMI, to have higher blood pressure, and many other things that negatively affect our health and cause us to die prematurely.
On that point,
Sure.
yes, there's a lot of correlation going on there, a lot of substantiated arguments, but there's no real evidence to suggest that it's causation. There could be a lot more factors involved there than simply just being in a hierarchical system.
No, that's true. Right. Jesus. I'm going to ignore your point. I have a lot to get onto. The Office of National Statistics have said that as of June of this year, we have over 900,000 workers in the UK on zero-hour contracts. This is a 20% increase from the previous year. The Trade Union Congress has said the median hourly rate for a worker on a zero-hour contract is £7.25 an hour, compared with just over £11 for the average worker. If you're on a zero-hour contract, you get up in the morning, you don't know if you have work that day. You don't know if you're going to be able to pay for food, pay for shelter, pay for the things that you require to live. Is it any surprise that this would have a negative impact on your mental health? Many people in this position also become homeless, of course. And I have statistics, lots of statistics here about homelessness, which I won't be able to get through. All of these mental and physical...
Yeah. I'll second that actually.
Sorry?
Can I want to agree. It's great that you've motion for more time.
You can ask for a motion for more time.
Sure, if people want it.
How long would you like?
2 minutes.
Okay. Seconded by you. All in favour of giving Mr. Carter?
Can I make a point on that motion?
Your second, Sir Kelly, yeah.
It's just, I mean, obviously that is a procedure we have, but it's usually only used under exceptional circumstances, so I'd like to just clarify what the exceptional circumstances are.
If the House votes it through.
Okay, but so as not to set a bad precedent.
Agreed, yeah.
I would like to make clear what the exceptional circumstances are in this
The
case.
amount of points information he's taken is more than anybody else I've ever seen.
It's entirely dependent on how many points of information you take.
Very briefly, I have multiple times in the past put forward motions for extra time. I have never been made aware of this extenuating circumstances island, which is
It's not so much the exceptional circumstances, it's just the fact that it's something that arises so rarely that we don't often do it. On this occasion, well, we'll put it to a vote, but it's not ordinarily done. If it is done, it will usually only be in circumstances where you've taken so many where the points of information have taken up so much of your time that I feel it necessary to give you more time. But in this instance, I'm not sure that carries weight. But because this is such a rare instance, I'll allow it to be put to a vote. All in favour of giving Mr. Cargill 2 extra minutes?
Aye.
The clock is now on 7:06. I'm going to assume that's a majority. But that way we'll continue, so you have 2 minutes left. Sorry, Gavin.
I will go back a bit then. If you're in a zero-hour contract, it's also important to remember that under capitalism, a certain level of unemployment is necessary, both for keeping wages low, keeping competition of workers, and also to give an incentive to the people who are working to behave, to not get fired.
On that point,
sure.
How is it happening in a capitalist society with a welfare system that purposely supports these people?
That's my next line. For people who are already unemployed, either due to the lack of jobs or due to a disability or something else, they live under a constant fear of having their only means of survival taken away from them. Just yesterday, in fact, it was announced that half of Glasgow's job centres were going to close over the next year and a half. These threats of unemployment and underemployment lead to many people losing their homes, and for those that do, their situation becomes even more dire. In a 2014 survey of over 2,500 homeless people, 73% reported physical health problems, 80% reported mental health issues, almost half of them used alcohol or drugs or other drugs to cope with their mental health issues. Just this past Sunday, a 27-year-old homeless man died in Belfast in the Salvation Army hostel in town. And this is something that's going to continue over the winter. It happened last winter. There was someone dying every week. And all of this is only focused on the impact of people within the UK. The situation abroad in less affluent countries is even worse. For example, a teenager working 12-hour days, 6 days a week in China to produce goods that they'll never get to use. All of these mental and physical illnesses that I've described result in the premature death of a vast number of people around the world. Thank you.
So John, thank you.
Mr. President and members of the House, the only thing that capitalism kills is the efforts of socialists to destabilize this country. I'll be discussing how innovation in the field of automation will not lead to a long-term decline in the job market and how it actually helps those in lower pay jobs. A topic I realise is important to the future of capitalism in society. My 3 main points tonight are 1. Automation examples in the world today, 2. Historic examples of fear-mongering, and 3, a little light economic theory. So, point number 1, automation examples. Hard, dangerous, and dull jobs have declined, but our employment to population ratios have never been higher. 140 years of data since 1871 have shown that technology has created more jobs than it has destroyed. Number 2, historic examples of automation. In the early 19th century, a group of English textile artisans named the Luddites staged a machine trashing rebellion. Yes.
Okay, so I'm getting your point here. It's that automation creates jobs which people can get so they won't go into poverty. But how is automation going to help people who can't work under a capitalist system because they have mental or physical illness? What about them?
I think we've on many occasions stressed the need for a welfare system that we currently have in this country. And furthermore, I don't see how that really relates to the fact that we are continuing to increase our employment gap between people, for example, in South Korea, who have the highest automation rate in the world. They have they've only got an unemployment rate of 3.6%, or Japan on 3%, or Germany with the highest GDP, the lowest unemployment rate in Europe, and the highest industrial robots in Europe. And yet they have the lowest unemployment rate. And so the English textile artisans named the Luddites staged a machine trashing rebellion because of fear, and economists rejected their concerns as a lump of labour fallacy, which, to explain briefly, is the supposition that an increase in productivity would lead to a decrease in employment. And as you see, it has never been higher.
Point.
No. And a little light economic theory. Automation acts as a massive multiplier for productivity, which actually drives demand for human labour. It does not diminish it, which leads to lower prices and better services. Of course, there will always be, in the short run, what we call structural unemployment, but this is minimised. Yet if we look at our societies today, we will all have been better off because of it.
Point.
Yes.
So, you're still talking about how automation and jobs, etc. But what about all the finite resources that are being used up by capitalism and automation?
I don't think that's how that's relevant to what I'm talking about right now. But okay, I'll move on. Our society may not be equal. There is, of course, inequality, but everyone is unequally rich rather than equally poor. Furthermore, a diversified economy. Yes.
Right, I'm probably the only person in here that's actually lived in a communist country, well, something that used to be a communist country, and I can tell you that nobody was poor there. Literally, everyone was much better off than anyone is here.
Or just because it seems like they're not as poor.
No, it doesn't seem that they're not poor. They can actually. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. As economic evidence states, technology is not a hinder to employment, but rather a complement. For further reading, see the effects of technology on employment and an implication for public employment services. Machines complement human labour, and automation does not take away employment, but automation only makes people more effective, meaning better jobs. Whether this is through the use of light bulbs, which have replaced the need for burning lamps with oil, which I'm guessing I'm guessing you're getting to the point of finite resources such as oil, or we've saved lives through kerosene, or the use of computers, which have seen a diverse and range of jobs that are very creative, and unlike the third point, are completely different.
Point.
No. Furthermore, the usage of this automation allows our generations to become better educated, get the more available, better paying jobs, and make something better of ourselves.
On that point?
Yes?
I find the link between technology and economic progress a little hazy right now. I mean, especially whenever you're talking about stuff like kerosene, improved methods of farming and computers, those all stem from a military history background with the complex reasons of World War II. And the sheer fact that Nazi German rocket engineers were the major intellectual backing of the space race just shows that I'm just not seeing the link.
Oh no, it's well, that was mainly due to competition. What actually capitalism encourages, it encourages free market competition between people, which drives down prices. I'm just going to try to take the point there. I also think that there will be, thanks to technology, we might actually have a new market because of robots, which I would call made by humans. And it's going to sound really weird. Just like we have made in Britain, made in Ireland or whatever, I think there's some basis that there will be an increase in creative jobs through technology and through capitalism because of this increase. For example, companies like Starbucks in a sec. Oh, you might do it. Oh, yeah. Go.
There's an increase in creative jobs.
Yes.
But not everyone's creative. There's only such a capacity within the population for taking what are currently middle-class jobs required for intellectuals and so on. Not everyone is built for such a
actually, I ran out of time, but there's a few points actually. If we think about current examples of automation, would be automation in the front of the restaurant while people are working in the back. And since there's an increase in volume of orders thanks to automation, we would actually have more people working in the back than had been lost. And in conclusion, the proposition tonight would rather have the poor poorer, provided the rich cannot be richer. You cannot create wealth and opportunity that way. You cannot create a property-owning democracy that way. Thank you, Thatcher. Therefore, I urge you to defend the future of capitalism tonight by repeating the claim that capitalism kills. It has only made us better off. Through our own self-interest, we will be making the economy better as a whole tonight by going to the pub. And it's not from the benevolence from the bartender that we receive our drinks, but it is from their regard for their own self-interest. Therefore, I urge for you to vote against the motion tonight.
In closing of the argument, the proposition tonight, Miss Rachel Ireland.
Okay, so there's a lot of speakers tonight, so I don't really intend to introduce anything new so much as kind of like go over the kind of store of information that we've got. So to sum up the proposition side of the argument, we felt that capitalism is a self-perpetuating system that has a lack of regard for members of society that cannot benefit from it. It definitely is an issue of morality. Fair enough, we do have a welfare state. It's not necessarily the most effective, but it's there. But I would argue that this is not a proactive measure. This is a preventative measure to stop people from rocking the boat, because when people begin to rock the boat and they begin to ask questions, capitalism begins to crumble, and it can't have that. It needs to be constantly kept stable. It needs to be kept in constant motion, and it's that's killing people. So, proposition 2, Maggie gave a very good point about a false dichotomy, and it's capitalism that is, presenting this false dichotomy. It presents socialism as a complete evil, a complete airy-fairy, head in the clouds, and will not work. When this simply isn't the case. When you look at the role of the state under a socialist system, under a good socialist system, not a
That's an oxymoron.
No, I said no to that point. So, I lost then, sorry. It creates a false dichotomy, and the free market is not the same as capitalism. Not exactly. I'm not going to go into that now because I don't really have time, because there are a lot of points made that I'd like to get through. But on the point of crony capitalism in all its that was just a bad timing. Capitalism in all its forms does prevent social mobility, and I go back to those earlier points. It can't have people rocking the boat, it can't have people asking questions, because that's when it starts to fall apart, because that's when people realise that they can't do anything about it, and that's when people are unhappy. And so you have these two loops where no one can get out of it. Some people don't want to get out of it, that's a whole other issue of morality. But those that want to get out of it can't, regardless of this myth that they have been fed, that it's the same as the myth of the self-made man in America, that if you work hard enough and if you want it badly enough and you just continue to push and push and push and try your best, that you can achieve anything. But that's just simply not the case. I'll use myself as an example. I'll use myself as an example as a hopeful academic, and Chris's point as not everyone is creative. Not everyone can do a creative job. I could do a creative job. I'm very lucky that, and I'm not denying that I do benefit from a capitalist system. The creative job that I want to do requires capitalism. It requires me to come from a position where I can afford university, where I can afford not only to go to university, where I can afford to go to a good university, where I'll have a higher reputation and get a better job and produce more money, and so the cycle continues. Capitalism ignores the people that can't do this. Capitalism ignores those who have to, for myriad reasons, go into supposedly menial jobs, go into basic jobs, unskilled work, and that kind of thing.
On that point?
No. It creates these loops, and it creates these. It's a self-perpetuating prophecy, and it's killing us. It's killing those that it benefits, as Jamie was saying, by stress and putting us under all this pressure mentally and physically. It's killing us that way. It is killing us environmentally because of finite resources. And I would like to bring up the Industrial Revolution, the most literal sense of capitalism, killing people in the most literal sense. People died in workhouses and factories all in the name of progress, but it's a very specific kind of progress. It's not social progress as capitalism would suggest. It's physical process. It's maximum input, maximum output, and it killed people then. It's killing people now, and it will continue to do so unless we can do something about it. I think it's very narrow-minded of the opposition to suggest that it doesn't.
On that point?
Yes.
Do initiatives in regards to green energy and us innovating in these sectors, as my partner said, is that not where us moving towards tackling climate change, the climate and the environment in that ways, is that not a result of capitalism?
It's not the primary result of capitalism, and that's the issue, because the climate and green initiatives often come as an afterthought because they are not the most immediately profitable, if that answers your questions. A lot of arguments have made that capitalism isn't killing anyone directly, but I would argue that none of us have tried to make that claim. Capitalism, I think, could be described as a hitman, but it's covert, it's underhanded, it's very sneaky, and it kills by omission. It kills by forgetting those. It kills by forgetting those that can't help it. It only benefits some. And those are the ones that survive, and those are the ones that they don't even always prosper. I will stick with my original point. Those are the ones that survive. Let's not forget that war is in fact a capitalist issue, and that there are a number of factors going from contributing to certain members of society being more likely to go into the military than others. And I had another point. Yes, so we've never, to sum up, because there were a lot of points that I wanted to get through, and I think I've just rambled through them a bit quickly. So capitalism, while it may not kill directly, and while a lot of us, if not all of us in this room, will benefit from capitalism, it's killing us very, very slowly, and we would be narrow-minded and blindsided not to recognise this. Thank you.
Close the debate for this evening, Dr. Craig Miller.
Okay, I've heard a lot of arguments on both sides. I disagree with all of this side, I agree with all of this side. Sit down and I'm going to shut up. I'm sure you would like that. So, no, listen. How many people in this room work a full-time minimum hours job in this room? Full-time, you work right now. And how much do you bring home a month after tax?
1,200 to 1,500.
1,200 roughly, okay. After you say you have that same wage in London, right, you're basically left with about £400, travel 300 quid, right, and then food you're left with about £25 a week to feed yourself, all right? Now, I like to look at where the issue in that is, and I'm going to tell you it's housing. £800 a month on housing is extortionate. It's 2/3 of your wage right now. So where is the failure with that? It comes from self-serving interest in particularly where I live, in green belt areas, because I like my house price to go up by about 12% per year. Okay, that's the fact. Really what should be happening, and where I live, is new houses should be being built at the rate of knots to drive down that £800, right, to £300 to £400. Something that's reasonable, it's going to put some money in people's pockets. That's an absolute government failure, okay? We're not building enough houses, and the fact we're not building enough houses is what is crippling people at the bottom, okay? It's nothing to do with capitalism, it's to do with crony capitalism, which is what Maggie was trying to allude to, at least in my opinion, where you've got people with their self-serving interests that buy property in the sort of Hertfordshire areas of the country. And this is why people that are down at the bottom on minimum wage cannot lead a healthy, sensible life. Now, if I just did some figures just now, and let's just say we give the people who are on minimum wage a 25% increase, you're still only left with 300 quid in your pocket to buy food. Nothing. Okay, I know that's a percentage increase of about 200%, but the real issue there comes from crony capitalism and self-serving governments and MPs in areas where I live. Probably because people like me put pressure on them because I like my growth in my investments that I've made. But that's the reality, and that's where the failure is, and that's where the domestic failure and and that's where the domestic issue comes from. It comes from failures of the actual crony capitalist system that we've got. We need a freer market with less regulation, not more government intervention, basically implying more regulation onto people. Now, Prop do feel like they've answered some of the questions here, and I'm going to tell you they haven't done a thing. All they have literally told you is capitalism kills. They've not looked at any of the causes of death. So they've basically neglected to talk about the whole issue that is relating, does capitalism actually kill people? So you need to look at what kills people and what saves people, and then you might get an answer in this debate. We heard a little bit of correlation from third prop. I couldn't tell you there's any actual causation in any of his argument. I'm going to try and put some down now for you. So let's look at what kills people in the world right now. And it's effectively 82% is from non-communicable diseases. And effectively that means heart disease, with lung disease, with various other issues that are caused by tobacco, alcohol, exercise and diet. Okay, they're the big killers in the world. That's 82% of the death. You can talk about the fringes, the other 18%, that's fine, but we don't have time in this debate.
Well, that point.
No. Okay, so let's also now, I'm going to lay down a little table of sort of pros and cons, what kills and what saves. I've told you what kills, let's just talk about what saves. I'm going to get onto it. I do believe capitalism does play a role in what kills people, and I will get onto that. But what currently saves people's life? No. Basically, you've got my old favourite, vaccination, okay, that saves about 750,000 people a year, okay, that's across the Western world that vaccinate, okay. I'm now going to bring you forward to the last 20 years of medical innovation, okay, just because if you go back the entire world, you're talking about sanitation, which is a huge thing, but we don't have time for that either. So let's talk about what has happened in the last 20 years, and the big four things that are saving people's lives right now are MRI machines, robotic surgery, heart therapy for HIV medication, and telecommunication. Every single one of the big inventions that have saved people's lives in the last 20 years has come from the capitalistic monster. Now listen, if you think about it like this, I make an invention that I want to make a shit ton of money about, yeah, that's a second point, and I want to make a load of money out of that. Okay, I'm doing that for my own good, but unless people want to buy the stuff I've just made because it helps them,
I'm not going to make it. So I'm going to make stuff that people want because people want their lives to be enriched, and that comes from a capitalistic system. It doesn't come from the socialistic system where you're basically putting two hands behind somebody's back. There's not been one what invention has been made in the socialistic system in the last 20 years?
It wasn't about invention.
Well, that was where I was up to, so tell me.
That wasn't my point of information.
Well then, go on.
My point of information was that none of us have tried to say, oh, we need to revive a socialist republic. Our points have always been that although capitalism benefits, and it does benefit people, it is also killing people.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've basically got to the point where capitalism is good, but where I've got right now with our crony capitalist system is bad. And that is the point. We're in a crony capitalistic society where people are going to be serving their own self-interests. And that's what we're doing. Now, I think about it like this. Where are the main government failures? I've mentioned the biggest one that I think is the issue, which is housing. The second two, I think, is in relation to the issues with our healthcare system in the UK right now and education. Education is huge. We do not educate people well enough in this country. Right? If you think about, we've talked about obesity quite a lot and heart disease quite a lot in this debate. If you look at the amount of people that are aged between 18 and 25 that are able to make a meal from scratch, right, using healthy, fresh ingredients, you're looking at sub 20%. Okay, eating healthily is actually cheaper than buying ready meals. Statistically proven correct. The problem comes from a lack of education, that they don't actually know how to, they don't actually batch cook people. So you've got this situation where capitalism is indeed killing people, okay? I'm not going to say it's not. What I'm going to say to you is that the bottom line of capitalism is more people live from it. Now, if people are going to die, which is an inevitable consequence of being alive, and capitalism means that less people die, you have less death with capitalism. I cannot tell you that capitalism doesn't kill, because once you are born, you're going to die. I cannot argue that point. We have not yet, these great capitalistic inventions, invented a system where you're not going to die. We want to, trust me. So we can carry on our entire lives making money. But that's not going to happen. Okay, so I ask you, the House, think about it like this. Weigh up in your minds, what causes more death? A socialist system which has got absolutely millions, tens of millions of people's blood on their hands, or a capitalistic system where we have, I regretfully say, made a welfare system to enable those that aren't in a job to not die. And I'd much rather not have one. I know people are back to punch me over that comment. But the bottom line is, if you think about the way in which the capitalistic monster is now creating inventions at the rate of knots to save people's lives, you'll see that on balance, it is not capitalism that kills, it's every other system that has come before it. I urge you to vote against the motion.
Right, and with that, just because we're quite pressed for time, I think we'll do 2 questions to either side. So if anyone has a question for the proposition of the VATs, Mr. Neil?
Right, Neil. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, the motion is being, capitalism kills. Okay, well, kills is a verb, it implies intent or at least responsibility. Well, let's say without any system at all. Let me tell you what does kill. Nature, life, reality kills. Capitalism has reduced that quite significantly. So can we say that capitalism is responsible for the act of killing people when it's in fact saving them?
I'll try to answer that right. I can argue that obviously nature doesn't kill and obviously people are going to die, and probably more people die under capitalism just because in the past years we've seen such a rapid growth of population, so obviously the more people you have, the more people are going to die. But just going back to a sort of a previous point that I was trying to make, if you go to the eastern nations where I come from, there was no homelessness under socialism. Which is a huge problem in the capitalist world, because everywhere you go in Belfast you see people dying on the streets. This was not, there was no such thing under socialism. There was no poverty, everyone was getting shelter, money, they had a good mental health because they can afford all of their basic necessities. So in that sense, the system of capitalism is more conducive to people dying than a system like socialism.
It's just going to different people.
Yeah, I suppose.
the opposition like to respond?
Sorry, I just wanted to address that point there. The causes of homelessness in capitalist countries is due to mental health and substance abuse. Anyone with any basic knowledge would know that. It's very, very easy to get off the streets if you actually try. The problem is, these people, they genuinely, they have issues. I know that isn't a nice thing to say, but they actually can't help themselves. They have drug problems, they have problems with their mental health, as I said.
Cars born.
There isn't really any back and forth. There is one. No. Not doing it? No. Opposition? Any questions to the opposition? Yourself, sir. You, sir. Yes. Perfect.
Oh, lovely. This is long-winded. What will the opposition say to the argument I'm about to make?
Please be brief.
Which is that capitalism does kill because it creates waste, which inflates scarcity and scarcity kills people. And it creates waste because competition, a core tenet of capitalism, creates waste. Because several different companies in the same area will compete. They will try to create the same thing at the same time. You know, their R&D budget will be spent in parallel, separately, on the same innovation, and then whichever one gets to market with it first gets the money, and everyone else has wasted their money. Furthermore, competition, once again, creates waste because it forces companies to divert money into the industrialized psychological manipulation as advertising. And as such, we see that capitalism, competition creates this waste and therefore kills people.
Okay. Well, capitalism doesn't really create waste. It actually, in the long run, it starts by minimizing waste by taking the most value out of a service and a product. That's the entire point. Receiving the most, that's a good they can have. And furthermore, what was I going to say? What was your last point? Sorry, just like the last kind of bit. Just repeat it.
The waste of money on advertising.
Oh, the waste of money on advertising. I don't think this is inherently a bad problem because there's good parts of advertising, like for example when a researcher provides, apples are good for you, suddenly people are going to consume more apples and then supply will catch up and price will catch up and the supply of apples will increase. I don't see how that's inherently a bad thing that we're advertising the good opportunities of good goods.
How many times have you seen an advert for an apple?
Innocent smoothies. That's one thing.
Yeah.
If you can expand on that as well.
Yeah, so expanding, I'm still talking about the same issue. One of the things we had discussed when we were, this is still okay?
No, by all means.
No, okay. Sorry. One of the things that we had talked about, well, first of all, one of the things we recognised was just how many issues there are, and I think that description of advertising is fantastic. It is nothing more, it is nothing short of psychological manipulation. But one of the more kind of you need to see it right.
No one can read your handwriting.
One rule to the left and one to the right. I am not going to address that right now. I'm not going to address that issue. But one of the things we talked about was one of more seemingly minute things was actually food waste. So if we produce food for 11 billion people, but 1 billion are still starving, that's pretty much the same point as the Industrial Revolution. That it's all in the name of progress, but there are still people left either getting themselves or being killed by machinery or by lack of food. Capitalism is killing by omission.
You know I can't.
That was an expansion on the point.
That was an expansion on the point. That's why it was allowed. So, any questions that are sort of abstaining on the motion that you'd like to address jointly to both sides? Anything you thought were lacking or you'd like explored more in their arguments? No. You have an opportunity. Anyone from the floor want to ask such a question? Yourself, Mr. Thornton?
The point of it sort of came out through the debate that you could either have one capitalism and socialism was completely out of sight. So can we at least explore the idea of the system that we have in Northern Ireland, and we all know in the room that I love going on about Northern Ireland debates, but can we please explore the option of both working side by side?
Proposition, go first. Sorry,
Well, to that, I guess the rest of the proposition might hate me for this, but the point is that every ideology will end up killing someone, except for pacifism. So the point isn't really we shouldn't have capitalism or socialism. There's something else entirely that won't end up killing people.
Opposition, like to respond to that?
I would like to say that I believe we did explore that. I talked about the benefits of the welfare states, more aspects of capitalism that we've mentioned that are able to save lives in that way, which you only find in this way in a capitalist system because it represents that progress which does not kill people, as the motion would try and suggest. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to go to one more question for the proposition.
So I was kind of disappointed with a lot of your arguments. As the opposition alluded to, we saw a lot of correlation and a lot of causality. So I'd like to give you a chance to expand on what are some of the characteristics that you view as intrinsically resultant from capitalism that cause people to die. What behaviours does it encourage within people that cause people to die?
Right, so one of the things that was mentioned a lot by the opposition was that the causes, like the most common causes for death are like obesity, smoking, depression and all these things. Okay, not depression. Okay.
I'm giving us some education.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. But these are all things that Jamie said were direct cause of alienation from your work. So I don't think it's really a lifestyle choice. It's more of it's caused by the fact that you only have like a 0-hour contract job, and it's caused by the fact that you work in a pin factory, that you then end up smoking, you end up like getting obese because you can't afford the food, and all the rest of that just leads into death of 18 million people every year.
No. Okay. Mental illness, 80% is genetic. Okay, there is a 20% environmental cause. I don't think there's anything more isolating than being a subsistence farmer. Okay, which is basically what capitalism has taken us out of. Okay, we now have an ability to make an abundance of food. The problem comes from the distribution of the abundance of food. They've made laws in certain capitalistic societies, like they have in Italy, where you're not allowed to throw food out, and it's got to go to the homeless people. We need to do more of that, not changing the capitalistic system. Okay, we have to see, okay, we have this surplus here, and we haven't made any money out of it, therefore let's not throw it in the bin, let's do something that's going to stop more people from dying. You don't have that in a socialistic subsistence farming issue.
Because you don't have to.
No barracking. The issue comes when you have mental illness. We have some okay, not great, we have some okay medications that treat a variety of mental illness. We don't have enough cognitive behavioural therapists yet. We're about 25% under. We wouldn't be able to train those CBT professionals unless we were in a capitalistic society where you can afford to say, here's 4 years out of farming to go and get a better education. Okay, it's farming that's allowed us to treat a vast majority of the mental illness that we've got in this society. I'm going to say one thing. What is more devastating? To know that you're going to have a drought, not be able to feed your entire family for the next year, right? Or to think, actually, I might be a little bit isolated in my job where I'm putting pins in a pin run. I'm sorry, the fact if you can't feed your family for a year when there's been a drought is a far more devastating issue than having certain aspects of the division of labour, okay, which I do indeed isolate people, but the bottom line is the alternative to that is far more devastating.
I'm sorry, the proposition have already made their argument. We'll now go to a question to the opposition. I think we'll skip on the abstaining questions now because we're all really quite short on time. So one last opposition question from yourself, Mr. Sullivan.
I'd actually like to kind of respond to what you just said. You seem to think that in a communist society, everybody must be a subsistence farmer. We must all live in tribes and huts, and we must all pray to the chief or whatever. No, not at all. We can still have automation in a communist society, and in fact, there's still an incentive for automation, because then, with lots of automation, you can have less farmers, so you can have more people doing things like being doctors and teachers, so that you can get better technology and so on and so forth. Capitalism, you don't need to have capitalism to drive technological progress, is what I'm saying. You don't have to be subsistence farmers.
Opposition?
Yeah.
Care. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Look at that. So there's been a 6,000% increase in caring jobs since sort of the capitalistic industrial revolution. I think we recently took a family trip to Cuba, which was very against what I would have liked to have spent my money on, but we went there nonetheless. And I don't know if has anyone been to Cuba recently in this room? No, great, so I can say what the hell I want and it's fine. No, I'm joking. We basically went into a supermarket to buy 2 bottles of water, okay? It took 2.5 hours to buy the 2 bottles of water. It did. I sat there for 2.5 hours, I was really thirsty. I actually drank them in the shop. I was that thirsty. Because the one lady behind the till didn't have a working credit card machine like we do here. It takes about 15 minutes for the signal to go across. She also has half the stuff that are under the counter that they can't put out because they're so worried about people stealing it because there's such a lack of product there. Okay, that's the only sort of mass socialist system I've been to, and I can tell you there is no advancements in the entire country. It's literally like going back to, I can only imagine what my grandpa lived in the 1910s. Okay, it's a terrible system there. Go there, come back, and you will completely see what you've just said is nonsense. Basically, we have to live in this system. The automation that is derived through profit and the actual incentives that we have right now to make money, to make top quality goods, right, is there. And it isn't there when you don't have that profit incentive.
Yeah. No, just to repeat a point that I made earlier, that, no, I think, well, clearly it didn't go in, so I'm going to make the point again because you brought up the Industrial Revolution, that the Industrial Revolution, well, it is the complete epitome of a physical, technological process. It's also the most real way in which capitalism has been killing people. It is the use and it's the waste of human life. And we aren't arguing for a system like Cuba or feudalism. We have never argued that point. But you continue to bring up things like the Industrial Revolution, despite the fact that that is capitalism's most literal way of killing people. You keep bringing it up, though. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, right, no problem. With that, we will go to a very quick vote. The first vote is prior opinion, prior to this debate, sorry. So, before you came into this room, you were...
Guys, please.
Before you came into this room, you supported the motion. Please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
It's a good thing. Really? It's a good thing. And if you were opposed to the motion before you came into the room this evening, please raise your hands and say nay.
Nay.
Kill the traitors.
Kill the boy.
And if you abstained on the motion at all, but if you didn't have a prior opinion before you came into the room this evening, right, and this vote is on who you thought spoke better this evening. So if you thought the proposition spoke better this evening and established their argument effectively, please raise your hands and say aye again, I suppose. Yeah.
Yep.
You can vote for yourselves. You can vote for yourselves. Yeah. So if you thought the proposition argued better this evening, please raise your hands. Actually, I should add the addendum that you should probably raise your membership cards because then that full vote is actually counted. So, I'll give you all a minute because I know you're all going to vote for the proposition, right?
Thanks, Ben.
It's interesting how we have to buy our votes.
Yeah.
Pardon?
It's interesting how we need to buy our votes.
It's not Australia, right? Pay for privilege.
Right. So I assume you're holding in nervous anticipation of me saying to raise your hands again. So if you thought the proposition argued more effectively, please raise your hands and say aye. With your membership cards.
2.
And if you thought the opposition spoke better this evening, please. If you thought they spoke better, please raise your membership cards and say nay.
Nay.
And if you felt that both sides spoke equally well or equally rubbish, please raise your hand.
Don't think I can stretch please.
Really good on 6. So on the vote of prior opinion, the motion was 13 votes in favour of the motion and 6 against. On the vote on speakerability, the vote was 2 in favour of the proposition, 6 against, so I can say that motion... 12 against, sorry. The motion has failed. Just to note before the House that there were 2 fines this evening by Dr. Craig Miller.
Yeah, shut up.
I'm sure gifts of capitalism can bestow upon this House a nice bottle of port for next week.
It'll be Thatcher's legacy.
And I think also we'll have another bottle of drink. A drink of Chris Pratt's choice, apparently. And if you all want to join us in the pub now, by all means, thank you very much for coming along.